Today on The Binge Thinker, I'm talking to you about starting with your purpose, understanding systemic thinking to transform the way you think about your life, and my story about being a gifted child that was boxed away for no good reason. Welcome to The Binge Thinker. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to The Binge Thinker episode 41. My name is Jameel Raymond. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as always. Today's episode, we're still trying to figure out the new way of putting this podcast together. I'm going to talk to you about three key things. Still trying to figure it out. A little bit about the journey to date of my solopreneur journey. Some of my physical and mental health toolkits to help you optimize your life. And then just talking to you about me, a bit of my story. It's trying to connect the dots of who I am and where I've got to in today's world. Today I'm going to start with the toolkit. I'm going to start with a little tip of mine that I think can really add a lot of value to your life. And that is the concept of systemic thinking. Now, this is something that I've been really obsessed with for mostly the last 12 months, maybe the last 6. But it's just been this concept that I've been building about systemic development, about understanding from a technological and a personal perspective, this exploration of who we are as technology itself. Now, that sounds like a bit of woo-woo, but I'm developing this ongoing theory about technology, being a technologist by trade, about who we are as individuals. We are actually complex systems of being. The reality that we have formed within ourselves, the reality that we see every day, this conscious awareness that we have in our minds, what we see out of our eyes, the perceptions that we have to the external world, how we believe and interact within it is completely derived of our perspective of our physical, mental, and spiritual health. And trying to figure out who we are is an incredibly complex, ongoing life journey. But by being able to break down who we are into key areas, which I think is physical, mental, and spiritual health, these 3 planes of our existence, and then even more so breaking down the key systems that operate these tiers of health, it really helps you gain control over your life by being able to just have bite-sized pieces and understandings of who we are and building a ground-up understanding of who we are as individuals. So to take it back to the technology aspect, we are this complexity of applications, of skills, of language through coding. Our coding is literally in our DNA. The language that we operate in is our thoughts and our belief systems. And who we are and how we perceive the world is entirely governed by the perceptive process, understanding where we place our attention, what information we receive, what the cognition is, how we perceive this information, and that's outwardly transmitted into the world in our perceptions of the world. I've talked about this on earlier podcasts, but you probably don't remember it by now, and it's always good to have a bit of a reminder because systemic thinking is one of the most transformative ways to think about your life. What I want to do in this podcast and part of my story is not to tell you what to think, but how to think. And this is something that is increasingly decreases a capability. It used to be part of universities when they were more about independent thought and less about just farming out employees. And that's our education systems, I think, are largely failing us. So this is why I'm really interested in self-educating, putting what I've learned out there into the world, because these are the things I really think can really change and develop an individual. And I'm not the first person to talk about this stuff. I'm not the last. I'm just sharing my vision, my knowledge and what I've learned with the world because I'm here to create impact. Simple as that. So systemic thinking. Why is it so important? It's because you need to understand more broadly in your life that we operate in cycles, that we operate in ecosystems. right? We talk about the planet being a big, complex ecosystem. It is. I mean, it can be broken down into smaller components that affect how the ecosystem operates. And that applies to you as an individual as well. You as a human being are the product of a complex orchestration of physical, mental, and spiritual systems. And the higher up you go into these planes of thought and reality, from the physical world to the mental to the spiritual, the physical world has a lot more definable attributes that you can measure and improve. The mental, less so, and the spiritual, well, literally, it is spirit, it is ether. It's very hard to determine. And that's why a lot of religious and spiritual learnings are purely based on faith, not the literal matter of the world, but these feelings, these non-existent things, these nothings that exist within us as energy, and we connect on to a higher purpose, to a God, or amongst others with emotions. So to really break this down into a smaller, easy to digest system, the complex orchestration of who we are can be broken down into physical, mental, spiritual. The easiest thing to do to understand first is to understand your physical systems. Because as someone that used to be overweight, did not sleep well, has ongoing mental health problems, has had multiple mental health problems in the past, was not fit as an individual, I've had to optimize every system that exists in my body. The easiest way I can describe this to you in the physical systems is to basically map out what I've learned so far. And here are the 4 key systems that you need to understand about yourself to optimize your physical health, right? Number 1 is your diet. Quality in, quality out. It's that simple. What we input into our bodies physically, mentally, spiritually does affect how we perceive and operate within the world. If you don't eat enough, you starve. You eat the wrong shit, you get fat. So understanding diet, that is measured most simply in calories. So understanding your calorie balance, your calorie equation, how much you should intake per day, is an extremely important metric to understand for the baseline of your physical health. How can you find that out? There's plenty of things, there's plenty of calculators, there's lots of fitness influencers. Google it. Roughly, I'm on about 2,000 calories per day as an individual at 5'7" and about 80 kilos. If you are taller, then those calories would go up. And if you're shorter, then they would go down. But I'm not going to go into the depths of that. We can talk about that at a later ep. The next system that you need to understand is your circadian rhythm, your sleep. And you probably would have seen, hopefully, on the internet, everyone's talking about their sleep hygiene, understanding how to maximize your sleep cycle and understanding how important it is to our well-being. I'm a big fan of Dr. Andrew Huberman's work, who's given a massive toolkit on the importance of sleep and what you can do to optimize your sleep every single day, right? So it's things as simple as waking up and going to bed at the same time every morning, getting sunlight directly into your eyes to regulate your circadian rhythm, 10 minutes a day first when you get up, or if you wake up before the sun like I do, as soon as the sun gets out, getting out there for 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the weather, to optimize and tune your circadian rhythm. Staying off your phone in the first hour and the last hour of your daily sleep cycles or before you go to bed. Avoiding caffeine, right? There's all systems and all of them are cycles in what we do every single day, right? You eat every day, you sleep every day. So it's not about these big swings or these yo-yo diets or these crash fads that are going to give you the most out of your life. It is the optimization of your daily habits that build up over time that give you physical, mental, spiritual health. Okay, so understanding your sleep, understanding your diet, very critical. Number 3 is your hormonal systems, right? Understanding how hormones affect you as an individual. Testosterone primarily for men and estrogen primarily for women. And it's insane that I've had to wait till I am in my early 30s to really understand this system, because it creates so much drive and so much individuation within us as a species, and yet we don't understand it about ourselves, right? Testosterone to men creates drive. It creates aggression, but it can be healthy, right? It's mostly a drive-based hormone. And that's what gives us the ability to work through pain, to work through issues. It reinforces growth. We actually, at high doses of testosterone, really enjoy the struggle of life, right? You look at bodybuilders, for example, who are a great peak example of hormone optimization. And how can they lift these heavy weights? And how can they be driven to exhaustion day after day? Testosterone, it drives them. With estrogen, I'm not a woman. I'm not going to talk to you and espouse what estrogen does for you, but it is incredibly important to optimize that in both women and men. So something you might not realize is that men and women also have a little bit of testosterone and a lot of estrogen, a little bit of estrogen in us as individuals. And it's important to regulate that within our hormonal optimization. Why? Because if you as a man have too much estrogen, then you get like feminized, which is unhealthy. You get acne, you can get gynecomastia, which is bitch tits, right? You can become increasingly hormonal and emotional. If you have too much testosterone as a woman, then you do get the characteristics of a man. You do get a deeper throat, a deeper voice. You get facial hair. You can even enlarge your clitoris if you've got too much testosterone. Ironically, though, from what I've understood in hormone optimization for women, most hormone replacement therapy for women in their older ages isn't actually about rebalancing estrogen. It's actually about rebalancing testosterone. So it's important to understand the duality of testosterone and estrogen in our lives, how much of an importance they play to our mental and physical well-being. Because the more testosterone or the more estrogen you have relative to your gender, the more personally aligned you're going to feel. And I can speak to this from personal experience as someone that has experimented with hormone optimization, taken testosterone in the past, and has royally fucked it up. Okay? I do not recommend the use of exogenous testosterone to anyone. How did I get sucked into it? Pretty simple. Like every other gym-going dude in their teens and early 20s, I wanted to get big. I wanted to get big fast. I want to take the shortcuts. I see these guys that are getting great results on testosterone, juicing. The era of Ziz and bodybuilding was big when I was in my late teens and early 20s. And I took testosterone twice. I took it 2 12-week cycles, a couple of years apart. And I royally fucked myself in the process. And now, a couple of years later, after my last cycle, which was in 2016, I've only realized how much damage it's actually done by crashing my testosterone, by not doing the optimization and the injecting of it properly. I've had to recover my testosterone naturally using supplementation, diet. And now, with a naturally optimized hormone state, I feel clear, I feel driven. I feel like I've got that. And so understanding that, keeping that optimized is really important to that next level of driving up to your mental health as well. And the fourth system that I think you should recognize is about exercise. It's about creating a habitual system of exercise that you can adhere to. Personally, I used to be a little fatty, as we've talked about many times on this pod. And by understanding and creating a system of exercise that I enjoy, I can adhere to it. And now that system is downloaded into my subconscious as something that I just have to do every single day. Currently, I'm training 6 days a week. I do 2 1-hour cardio sessions, just slow, steady state cardio that allows my mind to wander and I do a little bit of a brain dump of thoughts in my head. And then the other 4 days, I'm training my upper and lower body. So right now I'm training quads and calves, hips and hamstrings, my back and biceps, and then chest and shoulders. And then I'm throwing a little bit more into my biceps just to balance it out after the injury. But again, 6 days a week, right? Habits that you create every day. You need to download and repeat these systems as habits and get them from the conscious activation in your life to the subconscious. And that takes a little bit of effort, just like creating any other habit in life. But then eventually, once you see the benefits and you see them compound over time, you rely less on motivation, and it just becomes a requirement in your life as a minimum to enjoy your life, right? For example, when I went to high protein keto, it sucked. To go from a flexitarian that's eating vegetarian a couple of days a week to a very high protein ketogenic diet to get myself shredded, it was a big adjustment. I'm eating a kilo of meat per day. I was eating 300 grams of protein per day. And it seems like a lot. I have regularly 400 gram steaks and 400 grams of chicken breast and 2 scoops of protein powder per day in a drink. Now, it's just part of who I am because I look fucking great. I feel strong. I'm getting gains in the gym. I'm getting lots of attention for all the right reasons when I never used to. So this shit feels fucking good. And then when it feels good, you don't want to let it go. So then you just, again, it goes from this struggle into the reward, and then it just becomes an adaptive part of who you are. And that's the system downloading over time, right? Now, at a minimum, I have to keep my physical systems in order to maintain my mental health. To maintain quality mental health, I need to eat well. I need to train 6 days a week. I need to optimize my sleep to 7 or 8 hours and minimize the bullshit that gets in between in my day that fucks my sleep up. And then I've also optimized my hormones to a place where I've got great drive, great mental clarity, a lot of motivation that comes from having a well-optimized and testosterone-driven body. Simple as that. I'll be talking more about systems, and I probably will break them down even further over time. But thinking about your life in systems, who you are, is extremely critical. You need to create mental models and frameworks in your brain. We are visual and process-driven individuals. That's why we are creatures of habit. The creatures of habit that we are is literally based on an ecosystem, a system that is a closed environment that repeats itself over and over again. And we improve in iteration by optimizing these systems for maximum output towards whatever your goals you have. Simple. So, break down your life into systems. If you are in business, if you are looking at your health, everything that you exist in, every paradigm you exist in life can be broken down into systems, into cycles. What you need to do is map that shit out, understand the codependencies, where does the flow of information, of resources, of output come from, and then how can you optimize these processes and tweak them towards your maximal outcome. And that's what I do in many aspects of my life, is systemic thinking. Right now, I am downloading new systems into my brain as part of my self-improvement journey. I have started working in a mastermind where I'm downloading systems from other people who understand the digital world of business that I don't understand. My world of business understanding is more about the non-digital world, the analog world, understanding people, the sales process in that, as opposed to the digital ecosystem, understanding sales funnels, conversion for websites, that sorts of stuff. I know I don't know it, so I'm paying an expert to download it into my brain efficiently, give me the information that's relevant, and then eventually that will become my core operating system, something that I can efficiently derive my existence upon, and how I can efficiently put that out into the world to generate wealth outcomes, whatever I need. So systemic thinking, cannot recommend it enough. Start to think about your life in systems. Next in the pod, I wanted to talk about my story a little bit about who I am. You get to know me, and it's important to understand this because it feeds into the third part of the pod, which is about my solopreneur journey and trying to understand the purpose around that. So the story that I've got for you is basically about my childhood. And what I've written here is being the smart kid that was boxed away. Now, when I was a very young child, a baby, I was raised as an only child. I did not have a sibling until I was 12 years old, but by that time I had emotionally grown to a point where we weren't necessarily siblings, or, we were just two different children. And when you go into therapy and you sort of figure out your trauma, and you sort of look back on your story to date and the narratives that we have about our lives and the stories that we tell ourselves, all of it just does come back to childhood, because these traumatic events, these times we did not feel the love that we needed in these situations, which is what creates trauma, these feelings of there's no psychological safety, is probably the best way to put that. That's most of what trauma is just not getting the love and the attention that we needed as children, and having psychological wounds placed upon us developmentally when we're so fragile that those things just meld into our psyche, into our belief systems, into our cognition. And unfortunately, without therapy and without going through the depths of our past and trying to dig that stuff out, it's going to affect our lives. And that's really a core part of therapy and the therapeutic process. When you go to therapy and you figure out all your bullshit in life, it's mostly just situations like that you have to unpick and reframe and just honestly heal and acknowledge with your own love, because the ego puts this protective shield around it, because it's there to protect us from the unknown, the ego. And then what it does is when those wounds are triggered, or they feel like they're being approached when we perceive them in our worlds, that's when the ego comes in with deflection and defensiveness or denial, right? So where one of my core narratives has been in undoing my trauma or my traumatic processes, I said that very weird, was being a kid that was left alone, and what society and people didn't really know what to do with when I was younger. So yeah, when I was a kid, I was very smart for my age. When I was at 2 years old, I could read and I could count. There are videos of me counting and reading with my family and my mum and my dad. We had a computer at 2 years old, which is very uncommon back in the 90s, when a computer was a premium service, as a premium device. It wasn't like the family computer that everyone has as a given. Having a PC in 92 was a big deal. And it was a big investment for my dad, who loved technology, and it's just fed its way into me, ironically. And that's made me a great technologist. So there's, again, videos of me, home movies of me at 2 years old playing a computer. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like much. In fact, it's the scrounge of childhood development is seeing kids being put away on an iPad to placate them. But back then, it was pretty cool and interesting and neat. So I was celebrated for being very smart as a child early on in the piece. But eventually, as I got systemized by going to school, that started to wane a little bit. So at prep, I was reading at a grade 2 level. So I was 3 years ahead of where my classmates were. I used to regularly get pulled out of class in prep to read with the grade 2s and 3s. And I would keep up. and people would marvel at how advanced I was. Um, I was the child psychologist. My dad spoke to a child psychologist about whether I should be put up a grade or two, so I could keep up or maintain my intellectual capabilities in this cadence. And the psychologist at the time said, no, it's better to leave him in that class, just so he could socially develop, right? And I don't know if that was the best idea or not, because I certainly remember as a kid being teased for being a bit of a know-it-all. I was just a passionate, lifelong learner, and still am. I mean, lifelong, of course it was lifelong. I was like fucking 6 years old. All of my life I was learning, and you should be. But yeah, I was starting to become ostracized for being too smart, because I would be putting my hand up and answering all the questions because I knew everything. I had all the answers. I would regularly, I remember, go into tests and go into assignments and work and just blast through it. Just get it done super quick, and then just sit around and wait and see the other kids struggling and not really understanding. And because I was so far ahead and the work was so easy, I got bored as a kid and ended up being quite distracting to the other kids whilst I was in school. So it even got to a point where all of my reports said, Jameel is extraordinarily gifted, but a distraction to the other kids. And that still rings true today, right? It's because I just love having fun and talking shit with other people. It's one of my favorite things to do. But when you are working or studying or have something that's more important than just talking a bit of shit, I can get in the way. Even now, I don't like working with other people, hence why I'm a solo entrepreneur. And when I was working as an account manager at Telstra, I would just sit away in a corner away from other people so I can get some work done, because I know that I am distracting to others and distracting to myself. Even now, today, I work from home predominantly by myself because I'm easily distracted. Even to a point now, I've realized that I need to wear earbuds or headphones in. I seem to be orally, so via the ear, distracted all the time. But one of the most traumatic events that I sort of laugh at now, but my therapist seems to think that this is, a key core story in my life, is that in grade 4, I had a teacher called Miss Simon. And Miss Simon was stern, but nice enough. And at this point, I had actually changed schools. This is my first full year at a new primary school, because we had moved from Clayton to Rowville in 1999. So this is the year 2000 that this occurred. And again, I was gifted, but I was a distraction. And I was answering all the maths and all the English questions. I was getting A's on all of my assignments. And I was interrupting the other kids because, again, I was just sitting there bored. So I used to sit at the back of the room. Miss Simon, to try and control me because I was talking and distracting other kids so much, would put me at the front of the room next to her, because she would think that I would, because I was close to her, the disciplinarian, that might invoke a little bit of fear to put me in line. It did not work. So when we were sitting at desks, instead of being sat at the back of the room, I had to get sat in the front of the room in the desk closest to her. And again, that did not work either, because I would still distract the other kids. I would still put my hand up to answer questions. I was still told many times to let the other kids have a go at answering things. Well, I'll just be simmering there with the answer. Just this irrevocable energy about wanting to understand and, be right, which is a common theme in my life. So it got to a point where I couldn't even have a desk mate. You usually would sit 2 to a table. So I couldn't have a desk mate because they would end up just cheating off my homework or any of my assignments because they knew I was so smart. And, kids then, they just want to get the answers right. And I don't care about sharing my answers, because I'm just like, I'm right. Why not? Have it. But it got to a point where I was so distracting and so uncontrollable in what they could provide as control or a means to placate me, is that Miss Simon had to get a refrigerator box, right, a big box, and physically barricade me from the other kids. So on the front of the desk and the side of the desk where the other children were, I visually could not see anyone else. Right? The box was so big that I just was in these little walls, and then all I could see was Miss Simon and the front of the room. And my back was turned to everyone else because of the way that the room was structured. So I'm sitting there, I'm still getting all my work done. I'm being blocked off from the other kids because they didn't know what to do with me. And did I end up doing? I ended up fucking around with the box. I cut holes in it to make little ways you can transfer little notes. I made games out of it. I created a little basketball hoop. I fucked around with it because I couldn't be contained. These were just elements for me to play with. And I would still distract the other kids on the other side of the box because I would just peek my head over, or I'd peek my head to the back and the side. But it really just was a testament to how our traditional systems don't really have the capability to moderate or encourage or develop extraordinary talent. Because I kept going, I kept getting smarter. I probably started dumbing out in early high school when, I just got distracted and depressed and, was bullied. So I sort of kept myself down over that time for being too smart because I wanted to fit in. So I started to self-sacrifice and self-betray, which is a common element in my life, was a lot of personal betrayal until I started working on myself in the last 3 years and sticking to my own personal integrity. And it also gives me this understanding of how powerful leadership is in our lives, and that bad leadership really can be highly detrimental to the system that a leader is supposed to operate in. One of the common quotes that I think about, that I read about probably about 2 years ago, and it says, "The shadow of a leader casts its way long," or something to that degree. And what that means is, the gaps that we have in our leaders and the people that are supposed to guide us and provide us, a way forward, and who we're supposed to listen to, their gaps as individuals can create a lot of harm to us as the people that are being held in that care. Because leadership really is a service that you offer to other people. And the understanding of leadership and the role of leadership is to enable the team's best work. In any ecosystem of leadership, a leader is supposed to facilitate the best work of its team towards the shared outcome. That's it. Over and over again, you are continually serving your people so they can be optimized towards the outcome that you are trying to achieve, your objective. This is something that I learned from Jocko Willink in Extreme Ownership and his leadership coaching business, Echelon Front. And it's something that I align with very much so. And that's what's misunderstood about leadership, is that the people that are put in front of us to guide us, teachers, educators, business leaders, politicians, every element where you have responsibility, there is leadership in that. There is the seed of leadership in every element. In your own life, you need to lead yourself. That's how you develop as an individual. Because as I'm talking about now, our traditional systems are not built to create leaders. Leaders create other leaders. The system is meant to process us with a basic amount of understanding through our developmental years, so then we can effectively become good tax-paying citizens and facilitate revenues that grow the nation. Okay? Now, in the last 20, 30 years, in the neoliberalistic area, those systems are falling apart because of profits, because of survival, and they do not facilitate an individual's best capabilities. That is left up to us. And that is correct to a degree, because it's really only up to us to understand who we are. And that's the real journey of life, is not to look externally, but to look internally about who we are as individuals and self-ideate and self-actualize. And that's what this podcast and that's what my journey has been over the last 3 years. But understanding that these are the gaps in my life that cause me to hide away and not live authentically. And coming to those realizations is that the system didn't know what to do with me, so why would I be a part of the system? If it doesn't facilitate and doesn't serve me, why am I a part of it? And that's kind of the solo entrepreneur journey now, is that I don't want to be a part of the traditional systems. I want my financial independence and freedom, because these systems are not built in the individual's interest. They are built in the interest of the corporation and whoever you exchange your time and your value to in exchange for an income. Right? The lesson of being made redundant, of being skewed away as a cog in the machine, has reinforced that in me and will never leave me until I get out and create my own freedom. And how that leads into the third part of the pod, which is understanding or starting with why, right? This is something that I learned from Simon Sinek, who is a great author. He speaks a lot about optimism and, just good people skills, about empathy. He's got this great book on leadership called Leaders Eat Last, where, again, we're just talking about individual leadership here and the skills that we need. They're all people-based skills, right? People are the constant in this universe. We're all interacting with people. All businesses solve human problems, solve people problems. So to understand business, you need to understand people from the ground up. And one of his great TED Talks was around starting with why. And he used Apple as a great example of that. In all of their marketing, people, like Apple starts from the purpose and works its way out. Most marketing, most copywriting comes from the product and works its way in. But when you go from the product to working its way in, you're not really acknowledging the problem of the individual and the emotions that are aligned to that. What is the purpose and the intention of what they're trying to solve in their lives that they need the product for? And living with purpose and intention is absolutely paramount in your day-to-day existence. And if you don't live with purpose and intention, that's where you get these dysfunctions of being that you have to null and numb out with drugs and alcohol. And when we see people that are purposely walking around, I'm sure we've all felt that. I've certainly felt that. That was a key cause of my depression when I was 17 and 18, was the pressure of having to decide my life in VCE and what I wanted to do in university, but being directionless, being purposeless. And then when I also negated or tried to squeeze down and push down my intuitive self in my later years, probably in the last 3 or 4 years before I started on this journey, that pressure of what I thought to be purposeful and intentful work, and not listening to that and betraying myself for the interests of others, that caused me a lot of internal disease. That caused a lot of internal conflict, a lot of anxiety, depression, a lack of motivation, not being able to wake up in the morning properly because the body knows what's coming. It's just this another ho-hum day of your 9 to 5 or whatever bullshit that we've been taught to say that this is the purpose of life. So starting with why has been an important part of developing purposeful and intentful motivation in building my solopreneur brand and my business. And where I think I've found myself to be now is the intent and purpose and the mission. A mission is extremely important to the masculine. Having purposeful led work is our primary motivator in life as the man. I talked about this in the podcast last week, right? Women are the fourth most important thing in your life, right? It needs to be your happiness, your mission, your family, your woman. In the masculine divine way, purpose needs to come before your woman. Your mission needs to come first. And they might not like that, but that's actually what they want because they want a driven man. They want to be looked after, but they also want a driven man. Anyway, I'm digressing a bit. What I'm trying to say is, my mission when it comes to building this business and building this brand of me is to break the chain, is to provide others what I wish I had when I was growing up, which is guidance, which is education, which is leadership, facilitating a safe environment for people to be their best selves. It's very hard for me as an individual to find quality mentors and to find people that I can trust to lead me because I've spent my life being independent, leading myself, and also not having a lot of guidance about what I could do with this immense potential that I had, to a point where I had buried it. And it was toxic to me because I knew that I was smarter. I knew I could do more. And it's very hard, to be quite honest, to not feel like the smartest person in the room a lot. And you think that's kind of useful and kind of cool. And it is to a degree, because my ability to self-regulate, lead, create drive, create an outcome, and be very systematic about the way I do it, that's what made me great at my job in sales, is that I could lead multiple stakeholders, connect many dots towards a singular outcome. But it was tough. It's tough to understand what you really need to learn in business and in life to get ahead. The systems, like I said, are not built to give you the real things about life. People talk about business skills. Business skills are solving people problems over and over again, right? We never hear about the financial systems that govern our lives. We're just supposed to be good employees while others make billions and trillions from systems and knowledge they know about money to make it. We are covered in shame when there is so much potential as creative energy that drives the universe and who we are as individuals, and not being able to cultivate that, particularly as men. So for me, the core of who I am and what I'm trying to enable in life, this first iteration of who I am in this journey, is to provide that guidance, that information, that leadership that I wish I had when I was younger. That I wish someone could have taken me under the wing, just like I take out to take me under the wing, the way that I wish many others had looked after me, and I wish they had looked after me, that never really came to go, hey, look, life's tough, and you don't really know what direction to go into, right? And you don't know where to go. You need guidance. And it's never going to be the perfect answer, but so much good can come just from a little bit of guidance, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of reassurance, right? So much so that I remember the people who have given me a chance in life. I'm really grateful for them. Those are people that I'm loyal to and that I would do pretty much anything for, because those good people are so few and far between, but they shouldn't be. And that's the beauty of the internet now, is that you don't have to rely on your immediate environment to get quality guidance, quality information from the world and to learn about the world. But it's completely underleveraged, and that's what this next wave of value creators and what the information age that we live in can offer to us as individuals for our best selves. Is that information is everywhere, but it's overwhelming. It's so immense, and we don't know what to do with it. But through experience, through iteration, through wisdom, and applying these things, we can pass them on to the next generation so they don't have to make the same mistakes. This is why I believe in mentorship and guidance. I've learned so much in life, not from what people have taught me to do, but observing others and learning what not to do. But those stories are seldom told. And that's the problem, is that we're all making the same mistakes over and over again as a society, when with wisdom, with guidance, that doesn't have to happen. And that's what's frustrating, right? We used to, in our tribal, cavemen selves in the Paleolithic era, we used to pass down wisdom through story, through communication. We used to be taught, and we used to have, our parents and our elders initiate us through the process. And this is what it takes to be a man. This is what it takes to be an individual to contribute to the tribe. And that doesn't exist anymore. That's been synthesized by our education system, which does not cater to the individual. And it particularly does not cater for those on the extremities. Now, we might see them be catered for from those on the lower end of the scale, people with learning disabilities or physical disabilities. We see lots of that, but there's not a lot that's catered for the individual that is above the curve, ahead of the curve, at the top end of the distribution. A lot of that, if you're lucky, if your parents are smart, they might put you into systems or schools that can facilitate that. And not to say my parents didn't do that, they tried, but socially it was more acceptable for me to be as part of the regular system. And I don't disagree with that to a degree, but again, the formal system doesn't serve us. And it's part of my mission to facilitate an education, a guidance, a mentorship, some direction for individuals that have been lost. Because you will be lost, and I have been lost, but I am finding myself every day. And that's what this podcast pretty much is. It's talking about the ways that I have found myself, understanding that I am a part of the collective consciousness, of the collective individuality of life. So my problems are likely your problems, and if I can help you and create value for you in education, then I'm doing my part. I'm living in the service that I want to for the rest of my life. So that is the why. That is the why of who I am. That will iterate itself and evolve over time. The first thing that it's going to come to is this course, understanding how I can translate my 10,000 hours and my high value skill, which is people skills, business skills, sales skills, and translate them into a package, into an outcome that makes it simple for individuals to learn, to adapt, to understand, so they don't have to make these mistakes, so they can efficiently grow and ideally become their best selves as soon as possible. So, that's the purpose. That's the why of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So if this sounds like something that you want to be a part of, you already listened to this, great. Keep listening, keep following along, because this is the journey now. The journey is putting out wisdom, knowledge that has served me well and will continue to serve me well for the rest of my days, and to share it with you so you also have your highest self to reach for. Yeah, kind of fucked that tail end. It would have been a lot more poignant, but whatever. You get what I mean. Folks, that's the show for this week. Trying to keep these bits under 10 minutes long. Probably not working so far, but hey, we'll get better at it next week. If you wanna support the pod, please give us a like and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening or watching this on. Share it with a friend. If those are insights that you thought were valuable, pass them on to somebody else. See if you can, be of service to others by sharing some quality wisdom here. Jameel J. Raymond on all the socials. That's it for this week. See you next week, bingers. Take care.